that's where I think the energy really kicks in and move forward on Friday, because that moon trines Mars and it's like, cool, if I just do this and if I can just, again, it's not about taking care of everything all at once and biting off more than you can chew, but just like doing what you can with what you have. How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for January 9th through January 15th of 2023. Two quick announcements. One, I'm not using a lapel mic anymore. I couldn't get the sound I wanted out of it. It just didn't sound good, and I'm much more anal about how the audio quality sounds, so I'm using this mic rather than the big mic. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy it. If there's any problems, of course, let me know in the comments. But also, just comment for the algorithm. Like for the algorithm. It actually really helps me out. Two, I'm doing a special collaboration with Voyage.Earth on these 2023 astrological calendars. So the reason I'm doing this is I've never bought an astrology calendar before until last year. I got these for 2022, and they are so nice. They're my favorite astrology calendar. They're so easy to look at. They're so simple. They're really well done. And the reason we're doing this collab is there's this special limited edition night sect edition. So there's a day sect, there's the white one, and there's a night sect edition, which is black. It's all in Latin. It looks really, really cool. I had mine on my desk here as like my go-to calendar to just look at the transits really, really fast. As well, if you purchase these, you also get a free download of the PDF file. So if you want to print them out and make your own calendar as well, you have that available as an option. So if you're going to get these, go ahead and check out with promo code CAMWHITE, and you're going to save 10% off on these calendars. They're really, really awesome. It supports me, it supports the channel, and if you are looking for a really awesome calendar, then I really recommend it. So anyway, let's get to the astrology this week. This week, we have Venus making a trine to Mars, we have Mars stationing direct, and we have Venus making a square to Uranus. Now, I said this in my monthly rising sign horoscopes over on my Patreon. So again, if you're not familiar, I have a Patreon where you can support me and my channel, but I offer Ask Me Anything episodes, live streams, I offer monthly overviews, and I do rising sign horoscopes for the month ahead. Why I'm so excited about this is that there's this group of transits that really lighten up Mars stationing direct. One is Venus making a trine to Mars. The other is Mars actually stationing direct. And then when we go to next week, Mercury stationing direct. All of these transits are just going to completely change the vibe of Mars being retrograde. And I don't know if you guys have felt this way. I said this in my 2023 year ahead horoscopes that are out. Most of you guys have watched those by now. The first of the year is not the first of the year. It's not going to feel like a New Year's and ready to go forward until Mercury stations direct. And so as we go throughout these next 2 weeks, you're going to start feeling more and more that energy of like coming back to life, wanting to start new again. Like right as Mercury stationed retrograde, like maybe a week before New Year's, I was like, I'm ready for the new year. And then Mercury stationed retrograde, and I've just been like, I'm not ready for the new year. I'm not in the vibe for it yet. But that really changes this week. And again, it's a group of transits. It's Venus making a trine to Mars, Mars actually stationing direct, and then once Mercury stations direct, we're just flying forward. So it's really exciting stuff. So we start Monday off with the moon making an opposition to Saturn, and then it'll go void for the rest of the day. If you're not familiar with what a void moon means, it means that the moon is no longer making any traditional aspects to any other planet. So it's kind of like when nothing happens. It's kind of a boring day. As well on Monday, we have Venus making a trine to Mars. So there's a lot, I don't want to say a lot going on Monday. The only thing that's really significant on Monday is the Venus trine Mars thing, which we'll get to in a second. But during this time, the moon's going to be in Leo, right? I've talked a lot about this. And typically, like, I like to be consistent with how I talk about a certain lunar transit, especially when most of the planets that it's hitting are kind of staying the same. But that moon in Leo is our emotions, our body, our senses being really connected to our ego, our pride, our sense of validation, our sense of being witnessed and seen. And as the moon goes opposite Saturn, there's this kind of pressure, right? I've talked a lot about performance and humility and, being on the stage and all of the lights are on you. And no matter what you do, you're going to have people that criticize you. You can have your best performance ever, and there's going to be people in that crowd that don't like what you do or they don't care for what you do. And that's just how life goes, right? And so I think as the moon goes opposite Saturn, there is this feeling of like feeling more pressured and feeling more criticized by the group of people that aren't going to align with, how you think or how you view things. And so it's one of those days where it's easier to pay more attention to like what you can't control or like what's going wrong rather than what's going good. And that just happens sometimes. And so the way I would like you to look at Monday is like, how can you appreciate what you do have and not worry too much about what you're not in control of, right? Like not everyone's going to like you. Not everyone's going to be into what you're doing. And while today on Monday, your emotions are going to be really invested into other people's opinions, and they're going to be really invested into how you look on the stage. You're not going to win all of the battles. And so it's just important to be easy on yourself, right? Like still give it your all, still, perform with your heart, put your heart and soul into it. That's something I love about the moon in Leo. But if you're doing it for the validation of others, you're going to be disappointed versus if you're doing it for yourself, right? If you're proving something to yourself, not proving something to other people, that's how you're going to squeeze the most out of this. And then after that, the moon is void for the rest of the day. So not too much happens. And there's this kind of like, almost like, it's kind of like when you have a performance and no one gives you any feedback and you're like, oh, did I do good? Did I do bad? What's going on? And you might be a little bit up in your head, but just don't worry about it, right? Like put your heart into it. Do it for yourself. Don't do it for other people. And the only other thing that's going on Monday is Venus is going to be making a trine to Mars. And again, this is really, in my opinion, completely changing the Mars energy. Mars is essentially motionless at this moment. It's not moving, and it's technically retrograde. So if you've been feeling that lack of inspiration to move forward, I mean, Mars is our energy, our drive, actions, intentions. And it's literally retrograde and about to stop moving it, period. So there's this real slowdown with our energy. It's Mars and Gemini. It's like overstimulation. I'm on an energy drink kick right now. And it's like, I'll drink an energy drink and I'm like, woo, like I'm feeling good. I'm feeling ready. And then like an hour or two later, it's like that crash. And it's just like, God, I don't want to do anything. I'm just like burnout. I just want to doom scroll. I just want to do nothing. And that's really like Mars retrograde in Gemini. It's like overstimulated, too much sensation. You're too distracted. But when you're distracted, like when you're on Instagram or you're just scrolling on your phone, you get to a point where you're like, all right, I've been doing this too much. I actually need to go do something. It's like sometimes you just need to like distract yourself to get it out of your system. And I feel like that's what a lot of this Mars retrograde has been. Now, as Venus makes this trine to Mars here, we're talking about Venus, fun, pleasure, excitement, indulgence. She's an Aquarius. So we are talking about society, other people, technology. There's something going on in that Aquarius part of your life that is really lightened up. This is something I also talked about in the month ahead horoscopes. Venus in Aquarius is like lightening up this last pass of Saturn in Aquarius. We only have a few more months of Saturn in Aquarius, guys. We're almost done with it. And something that I was saying on those horoscopes is like, nothing lasts forever. Like, and I think what's important about Venus with Saturn during this time is like enjoying what it is that you're dealing with now, because it's not going to be here forever. Even if it's a bad thing, like just enjoying it for what it is, because things are changes on the horizon. Big changes are really coming in March, guys. Like I'm not kidding when I say that. So I think as Venus makes this trine to Mars, there's this sort of melancholy / like, you might be bored, you might be like overstimulated, you might be distracted. And I think as Venus comes along, there's this sort of relishing in it almost, or, especially with Venus in the sign of Saturn, we're still in Capricorn season, taking something really seriously, being disciplined about something, whatever it is. I think Venus trining Mars is kind of this enjoyment and this pleasure in this area of, whether that's relationships, connection. For a lot of people, this is relationship oriented because this is the air signs. So maybe you're connecting more with people. Mars retrograde in Gemini. It's been holiday season. Maybe you haven't been hanging out with that many people or seeing that many people. Venus in Aquarius making that trine to Mars is like reconnecting with people, enjoying conversation, getting that human energy, instilled into you. It's like something that was so shitty about the lockdowns was just so like we're human beings. We need people. And, that energy when you're away from people, when you're isolated is like so horrible for your mental well-being. And so I think as Venus is in Aquarius, this is an excellent time to reconnect with people, go out more, connect with who your society is, connect with what your quote unquote community is. And I think as it trines Mars, this sort of like alleviates that distraction or that boredom or that burnt out feeling. And there's this small alleviation because Mars isn't necessarily direct yet, but when it goes direct, there'll be a big boost in energy. But this is kind of like, for example, if you're just like doom scrolling, you're distracted, you don't want to do something, maybe someone, gives you a phone call and you talk to someone you haven't talked to in a long time and you have this good conversation for like an hour and then you're done. You're like, man, I'm ready to go do what I was going to go do. It's inspiring. It's uplifting, sharing with people and connecting with people. So I really like Monday for that. So then we get to Tuesday and the moon is then going to enter Virgo and make a square to Mars. So this is where, if you want to call it a bad day, you can call it a bad day. I would just more so call it frustrating. And also I would look at it as an opportunity or a challenge to, especially if those people that are out there, I know some of you really struggle with fucking everything, but I would really look at this as an opportunity to like get your I don't want to say details right, but like, here's the thing. As the moon goes into Virgo, something I always talk about is, it's a good time to clean. It's a good time to organize. Our emotions are really connected to like it's Virgo. Like we need to be nice and tidy. We need to be organized. I need to have my stuff together. It's like moon and Virgo people just need to touch things and like get everything together, or otherwise their life is a mess. And so as the moon goes into Virgo, there is this sense of like, all right, I want to get my shit together, quote unquote, but it's going to be squaring Mars. Like that energy is not always there yet. And so this is one of those things of like, if let's say you have a dirty room, let's say, you're like, I just need to get my room together. But then you create this whole list of things that you need to do that then all of a sudden feels overwhelming. You then give up on yourself. You're like, oh, well, it's just too much. I'm just going to scroll or distract myself. And so I think with Tuesday, it's like, well, what can you do? Like so many people set these huge, extraordinary goals in this very short amount of time. And the reason they do that is their subconscious tells them this is what I want to do, because they know that they're not going to make it. They know that they're going to fail. And it's a way of self-sabotage. It's like if you don't own a business, you've never owned a business before, you've never done anything like that, and you're like, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to make $1 million this year. Now, is there a possibility that can happen? Sure. But more than likely, you're not going to be able to do that. But when you set this super high expectation of what you're, capable of doing, it's easier to not go for it because you're like, well, it's impossible to do. And then you just self-sabotage, and then you continue that narrative of your head that like you can't do things, you can't hold to your word, you can't accomplish what you want to. The trick is to find a goal that is reasonable, like something that you can actually do, but that slightly gets you out of your comfort zone. So it's like, okay, maybe you don't need to mop the floors and sweep and repaint the walls and do X, Y, and Z with your room, but it's just like, just make your bed. Just just clean up something real quick. Just do this. Just do something that is enough to say that you got something off your checklist, but is slightly out of your comfort zone to where it's a little bit more challenging, to where you actually have to, put some effort into it, and it's not all the way easy. And so this is excellent because once we get to Wednesday, that's when Mars is going to go direct. But again, I think Tuesday is just kind of prepping us for Mars going direct, right? We're still in the most slowest draining energy by Tuesday. And I think as the moon goes into Virgo, squares Mars, it's like feeling like you need to do something, but that energy just isn't there yet. So it's not that you need to accomplish everything, but just try to accomplish something. We get to Wednesday. The moon is going to trine Mercury and Uranus. I thought Mars went direct on Wednesday. Okay, no, it's Thursday. My bad. Anyway, so on Wednesday, the moon is going to make a trine to Mercury and Uranus. So this is, again, our second pass of Mercury trine Uranus during this Mercury retrograde. Oh, my bad. I lied. Scratch that. The moon is going to trine Mercury and Uranus as it's in Virgo. And so something I really like about this Mercury retrograde is Mercury's making a trine to Uranus the whole time. I mean, by zodiac sign, but it'll happen quite a few times throughout the retrograde. And this is, did that already happen? Am I missing that? Hold on. Mercury's at 11. No, that happened last week. Okay, sorry. Sometimes I forget what I talk about. But anyway, that's why I like this Mercury retrograde, because Mercury retrogrades are like problems and errors and like, what can I do wrong? But typically, like, I can't remember the right phrase for this, but it's like sometimes it takes a problem to occur in order for like someone to break through or to create a solution, right? Like if everything in your life was perfect, it would be harder for you to have a solution or to get creative in how you fix things. It's like, that's why we have all of the technology that we do, and the way that society is set up is because we've had all these problems, and these problems have forced people to be creative about a solution. And that's what I really like about this Mercury retrograde. And I think as the moon's in Virgo making a trine to Mercury and Uranus, there is this sense of like solution orientation, right? So, when the moon squares Mars, you might feel overwhelmed, like you're not getting everything done that you want to, but just get something done. Because I think if you just get something done, once the moon makes a trine to Mercury and Uranus, you're like, oh, well, that makes me feel better. And that's going to motivate you to do more and more and more. It's like you have to give yourself some kind of reward here. Like, again, if your goal is to make $1 million and you've never done anything like that before ever in your life, it's just going to be easy to give up on it. It's going to be easy to fall back into your old negative habits, into that old negative self-talk. Like versus if you just give yourself something of like, let me just get one thing done off my, task list. Like I always like those memes that are like, I write a to-do list for everything. And on my to-do list, it says drink coffee. And then it's like, wake up, drink coffee, take a shower. And then there's 3 things that you just marked off your, to-do list, right? That like validates a sense of accomplishment. And it's such a small, like corny little life hack, but it works. So the thing is, the moon makes this trine to Uranus and this trine to Mercury. There is this sort of seeing a solution, seeing another side, reframing your understanding of things, because that's what Mercury retrogrades are about. Like shifting your focus, reframing things, anything with the word re in front of it, essentially, with Mercury retrograde. So I really like Wednesday for just allowing yourself to see a completely different story, allowing yourself to see something completely different. And Mercury's still retrograde, right? We're still changing our plans. We're still changing our system here. Then we get into Thursday, and the moon is going to make an opposition to Neptune. It will then trine the sun, and then it will later go into Libra. But in the meantime, Mars finally stations direct. This is what you're looking for. This is what's the most exciting about this week. But what's important to know is that just because Mars stations direct, it's not like off to the races. We're going forward. We're flying forward. It is simply a shift. It's kind of like if you are, let's say, for lack of a better word, depressed, like when you're just like, in your bullshit and you're sleeping in your bed, you wake up and you just scroll on your phone for like an hour. Like that's like this last part of the Mars retrograde. It's like, I don't want to get up. I'm just going to scroll. And then Mars stations direct where you're like, okay, put the phone down and just get up. Like you're not going to just fly out of your bed and go do this and go do that. It's just making the mental shift of starting to move forward again. Because we still have 3 more months of Mars in Gemini. We have the rest of January, all of February, and all of March. Like realistically, Mars doesn't go into Cancer until like April, essentially. So we have a lot of time here. But Thursday's looking great, in terms of just a shift. Like I think we all just need a shift in the energy. And I've been telling people, especially if you're my client, like that if you like, I talked to a lot of people in November and December, and I was just like, look, the next few months are the same shit, it's different day. Like Mars is still going to be in Gemini. There's a Mercury retrograde going on, right? But for the most part, everything's still the same. But as Mars stations direct, there is this like, all right, it's time to move forward with all of the other things that we've been dealing with over the past few months. I want you to think, what's important about Mars stationing direct is this is where Mars was in early September. Let's think about September, because Mercury made a retrograde in Libra and in Virgo. In September, Mercury stationed retrograde in Libra, trining Mars. That was the first Mercury retrograde that we had with Mars in Gemini. Mars wasn't retrograde yet, so it wasn't as big of a deal. But we're coming back to the conversations and the things that were going on back in early September. What was going on then? Ask yourself, what happened then? What did you start? What was going on? And then from all of September and all of October, you were doing this, doing that. There was this plan. There was that plan. And then once we got to about Halloween, Mars stationed retrograde, and all of November, all of December, Mars has been retrograde, where it's just like, well, now it's the holidays and I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that and I'm overstimulated here and there. And there's been this kind of moving backwards, right? Once Mars stations direct, there really is this like, all right, what was I thinking about doing for this whole year back in September? And what was I able to accomplish between September and October? And what did I stop doing starting around Halloween in November? What did I start moving backwards on? Because now it's time to move forward with that. And in the meantime, the moon is going to be in Virgo. It'll go opposite Neptune. So it's one of those things of it. What I have a love-hate relationship with Neptune. I think you guys know that by now. I always have it. Anytime I have an opportunity to talk shit on Neptune, I do. But it's like something I love about or especially Moon and Virgo opposite Neptune is like, it's just one of those moments of like, God, what was I thinking? Like if you've been laying in bed, like let's say you wake up and you just lay in your bed and scroll for an hour or two, you get up and then you go, God, why the fuck did I do that? Like you start taking a shower, you're like, fuck, it's like 11, it's like 12. Why did I waste all that time doing that? And there's this sense of like realization. There's this realization of what, like, and it's not even realization of like what went wrong, but the moon opposite Neptune is just like, why the fuck, like, what was I doing that for? What was I getting out of that? And the moon's then going to make this trine to the sun, which I don't typically talk about the sun and the moon making aspects unless it's like a full moon or a new moon, just because it's not always the biggest deal. It just emphasizes whatever element is kind of activated. But this is the moon in Virgo, sun in Capricorn. Like we're talking about like systems, efficiency, plans, goals. And that moon in Virgo is like, once you get the right idea, once you get the right list, once you get organized, those systems become easier to accomplish. That's the whole reason, like when you talk about Virgo season in astrology, that's the time where we harvest the wheat. And what did we do with the wheat? I mean, we don't do this now, but think like Roman days, they would harvest all this wheat and they would calculate it to know how much that they can give out to the citizens, to society. And this is kind of like that Capricorn part is like, hey, we had all this, bread, and now it's like we're starting to get at the low point of it. But if you kind of if you're just giving out bread willy-nilly, and not paying attention to it, it's going to be easy to overdo it. It's going to be easy to overindulge. It's going to be easy to give out too much. But if you know your numbers, if you organize yourself, it's way easier to know how much people can get and how long that's going to last you. And I think with the moon shining the sun here, it's just this like it's kind of like the numbers all added up, and you counted your pennies, you pinched your pennies, you got your acorns for the winter, and now we're here. Now the other thing I will say though is then the moon will go into Libra. Now, when the moon goes into Libra, it's going to go opposite Jupiter, and that technically happens super late Thursday night, but mostly in Friday morning, because I'm going to talk about it on Friday. But as the moon goes into Libra, there is this feeling of, peace, serenity, harmony, balance, of feeling good about it. And the moon's going to go opposite Jupiter. There is this feeling of like, what can I give? What can I do? Jupiter in Aries is very like, let's just go and put all of your all into it. But that moon in Libra, those things require balance. Those things require working with other people. Those things require, you can't just Aries all day long. It requires a little bit of Libra. And so as the moon goes into Libra and goes opposite Jupiter, I feel like there's this feeling of just like being a little bit easier. It's like, again, you're not giving everyone everything and you're not doing everything all at once, but like, what can you do right now? And I just think as Mars goes direct on this day, there is this like, all right, we're done with moving backwards. I'm now out of my bed. You're not moving 1,000,000 miles an hour yet. We're going to get there, but there is this finally a sense of moving forward. Then once we get into Friday, that's when the moon's going to go opposite Jupiter super early in the morning. It will then square Mercury, and then it will trine Mars and Venus, and the sun sextiles Neptune. So mostly a moon day on Friday, which again, I've talked about this before. If you're new, you probably haven't heard me say this in a while. But I love the days where there's no major astrological transits, and it's just the moon doing a little, not ping pong. What's that stupid game where you hit the ball? Not billiards. I don't remember. I can't think of the game. Anyway, the moon's going to go into Libra and opposite Jupiter. So there is this sense of like, all right, I can give, I have the energy, but again, moon and Libra, like, let's just, again, when you get up after staying in your bed and scrolling for like an hour or two, it's like, okay, get up. You don't need to go 1,000,000 miles an hour, but just like, okay, take a shower, brush your teeth, get your coffee. What is it that you can do right now to where you can at least get that momentum moving forward? The thing is, though, is that the moon will make this square to Mercury, which is kind of like something that's hard about Libra and Capricorn is like Libra is like, well, everything has to be just right and just balanced. And, everything has to be just perfect. Not like Virgo where it has to be like pinpoint accurate, but Libra, like, there has to be some kind of equality or equity. I don't know what would be the right word here in terms of like, let's say you have this big list of things to do, but like prioritize. What are the things that are going to mean the most to you and that you can actually get done right now? That's more moon and Libra. But as it squares Mercury and Capricorn's like, well, you can't just relax all day long. You need to get something done. You can't just sit around all day long. But the issue is Mercury is still retrograde. So there is this, we're still rethinking our system. We're still rethinking our plan. And as the moon's in Libra, in the superior position to Mercury, I think there's this opportunity to say like, all right, if I want to get all these plans done, and this is my new system, this is my new efficient way of doing things. And we're not there yet, right? We're still thinking about all this stuff because that's Mercury retrograde. But the moon in Libra is like, let's bring some balance to this. Like, is it really like, can I really make $1 million this year if I've never done anything before? It's like, okay, well, what is reasonable? What is possible? Like what, and that might create some friction, but that's what squares are good for. It's like when you have a group of people to collaborate with and think about these things with, like you might have an idea that all sounds good in your head. And then you might have someone say, well, let me see how that can be a problem. Let me see how that, might not work the way that you have. And that's what I love about squares. It's just a good time to like, hash things out and see, what are the upsides? What are the downsides? What is the return? But then after that, after the moon makes this square to Mercury, it trines Venus and Mars. In fact, it trines Mars pretty much the same time that it squares Mercury. But it'll trine Mars and it'll trine Venus. And so it's like once we just kind of recalibrate and we balance things out of like, all right, what can I do? What is possible? What am I capable of doing right here in this moment? That's where I think the energy really kicks in to move forward on Friday. Because that moon trines Mars and it's like, cool, if I just do this and if I can just, again, it's not about taking care of everything all at once and biting off more than you can chew, but just like doing what you can with what you have. Like that's so important for people to understand. And I've been mentioning this more and more in my client readings, but I did a podcast, The Delineation, about how to find your purpose in astrology. And something I talk a lot about in there is like so many people want this dream job or even a dream relationship. I don't know if this really works the same way with relationships, but if you want this dream job but you hate your job right now and you can't figure out a way to enjoy it or at least appreciate it. When you go to that new job, you're never going to learn how to appreciate it because you couldn't do that with the job that you had. The thing is, we're human beings and we're so designed to find the issues with things. It's actually much more of a challenge to be grateful for what you have. And the thing is like, whatever it is that you're doing and you're starting out with, it's so much easier to be like, I don't have enough, or I don't have the right things, or I don't have this or that. But the opportunity for growth and the opportunity for like actually like accomplishing something is going, what do I have right now? And can I be grateful for it? And can I use what I have right now and be fine with what I have right now to get where I want to be? I tell a lot of people about like my journey through being a YouTuber, and like, for me personally, I've been doing this for 6 years and I only have like 41,000 subscribers. I wish I had more, and that's something I'm working on. For some of you, that might be a big number. For some of you, might be like, yeah, Cameron, you're not shit. But all I had, like, I didn't have Wi-Fi at my house because I was poor. So I'd go to Starbucks. I had this shitty laptop. I still have it. It was so shitty. It took like an hour to turn on. It only worked when it was plugged in. It had all these issues. And so I'd go to Starbucks, get the Wi-Fi. That would take a while, write down all the transits, and then shut everything off. Then I would go take my phone because that's all I had. And I didn't have like my apartment looked like crap. So it wasn't like I could just shoot in my apartment. So I went somewhere outside to shoot it for like 30 minutes before my phone overheated because I lived in Vegas at the time. And then I went back to Starbucks to upload it, which took another like 3 or 4 hours. But that's all I had, and I made it work. And it sucked, but like if I hadn't have done those things, I wouldn't be worth where I'm at right now, where I have like an awesome camera. I've got this green screen. I've got like a studio setup going on. And, don't get me wrong, during those times I super complained about like not having those things, but I still made it work. I didn't let my like outside circumstances dictate what I was capable of doing. Like, so many people are capable of doing more with less than what you have right now. And that's so important to remember, because this is all mindset stuff, guys. Like, all of this astrology, like something I've been really working on, because I speak in analogies, right? And in my consultations, I get people all the time that, and I might have said this before recently, but I get people all the time that are like, oh, my chart's probably the worst one you've ever seen, or this is so bad. Why is my life always doomed? And it's like, look, life is like a poker game. If you don't know what you're doing and you've never played poker before, you can get a great hand and you can fuck it up. Put a little bit of money down. You don't really know what you're doing, and someone can kind of make you feel uncomfortable where you just fold and you lose money. Or you can get a shit hand and make a bluff. And then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, what does he have? What does he not have? And then you can make a lot of money from a very shitty hand. And so I say that to say, it's like, and this is just true life advice. It's like, it's not about like what you have. It's about how you use it. And this is what's so important with the astrology. Like, it's not about like, oh, does someone have the most amazing chart? Does someone have the most, amazing planets where it's just easy and successful for them? It's like, you can look at so many celebrities or so many other people that have really hardcore charts, but they found a way to play their hand. They got the cards that they were dealt with. And that's what's amazing about astrology. This is like for example, I feel like playing life without astrology is like, you get dealt cards, but you're not allowed to look at them. You have to like figure it out on your own, versus like astrology is like allowing you to actually see the cards that you have available. And again, it's not about what cards you have. It's about how you play them. Are you playing smart? What game do you have to play? Are you just trying to win big right immediately, or are you in it for the long haul? And so I kind of forgot why I got off on this tangent, but this is, at the end of the day, it's not about, well, that's why, because it's like, you got to be able to do with what you have. And this moon in Libra trining Mars and Gemini, I think, is allowing that space to be like, I'm okay with where I'm at right now. I'm okay with this just being what it is and doing what I can do with what I have. So then we get to Saturday. The moon is then going to make a trine to Saturn, and it's going to, and then Venus squares Uranus. So I have a lot of mixed feelings about Venus square Uranus because it's such a weird transit. But anyway, on Saturday, the moon's going to be making a trine to Saturn, pretty much be void for the rest of the day. Again, I just think that this is just allowing, like, again, it's Saturn stuff, moon, trine, Saturn, like, hey, like, emotionally, like, we're feeling a lot more connected and harmonious with like the part of ourselves that needs to be more disciplined, that needs to be more mature, that needs to be more adult, that needs to grow up more. And so Saturday, I think, is really like that kind of like pat on your back your dad never gave you, but you got to give that to yourself in a sense. But Venus makes this square to Uranus, which the reason I have so many mixed feelings about it is that it's just a weird transit. Like Venus and Leo is going to be squaring Uranus for months, by the way. Like we get 3 squares to Uranus all throughout that Venus retrograde. But Venus in Aquarius, we're talking about, I feel like Venus in Aquarius embraces the weird, it embraces the social discomfort. I made a joke about my stepdad last week of like, he's so awkward, but like everyone loves him and he's always so social. And Venus in Aquarius is just kind of enjoying that spot. But I think as it squares Uranus, there's this disruption. There's this kind of like, and again, this is on a Saturday too. So this is on a weekend. So this is, the chances of you going out and hanging out with people are more likely. But as Venus makes that square to Uranus, it is kind of like, Uranus is in Venus's sign. Venus is in the superior sign. It's like allowing yourself to get uncomfortable or allowing yourself to do something, radical, like, or at least what in your opinion would be radical in terms of society, hanging out with people, technology, connection. And so this might just be like, if you've never been to a, what's a good example of this? Let's say you've never been to a like underground techno show underneath a freeway pass and you've always wanted to, but you never did. This is that day where you might go, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to do it. You know what, fuck it, I'm just going to go after it. You know what, I am going to go hang out with these people that maybe I would have never associated with before, but I'm into what they're into and I'm interested in seeing what's going on. So I think Saturday is an excellent day to just, try to do something different, especially with friends, connections, society, people, do something, go out of your comfort zone, I think, with that kind of stuff. And also, too, when it comes to like, maybe you just make a purchase of something really weird that typically you wouldn't be into, especially technology related or something like that. But it's going to be a little weird, but it's not, I wouldn't consider it bad. I might consider it bad if you're expecting things to be like, the consistent, the same, and usual versus the way to hack this is just kind of like doing something different. Then we get to Sunday and the moon goes into Scorpio. That's really the only thing. And I talk a lot about this. The moon going into Scorpio is like that feeling when you're leaning back in your chair and then it leans a little too far back and you almost fall and your like, chest sinks into your stomach. The moon going into Scorpio on Sunday is feeling a little painful, feeling a little remorse. It will be applying to the south node for the most of the day. That doesn't actually happen until next week. But as the moon goes into Scorpio, there is this kind of melancholy feeling. And so I feel like also, too, this might be a part of like Venus squaring Uranus where it's like, I'm going to try something different. And then like maybe it doesn't work out. The moon goes into Scorpio and you just fall into a depression hole. But I think, because here's the thing. This is also a waning moon that we have going on here where like the moon is really decreasing in light. So this isn't like, for example, if this was a waxing moon going into the moon in Scorpio South Node, it's like in order to highlight this area in your life that you're going into or come into this achievement, you have to let go of something. There's this kind of like, like anger that's holding you back and moving forward versus I feel like this is just kind of like cutting out the weeds. Like it's kind of like, women might be able to say they can deal with this, but men deal with rejection way more than women. And there's a certain point when you're a guy when you just kind of don't care about the rejection or it's just kind of like a part of it. Like, like you got to shoot your shot. A shooter's going to shoot. And every now and then you're going to get rejected. Most of the time you're going to get rejected. If you don't have like, so all the kids are using Riz nowadays as like, well, it's so funny because back in my day, it was called swag. And I just remember there was a point in time where it was like, swag is so cringy to say. I guarantee you in like 3 years, people are going to be like, stop saying Riz. That's so cringy. It's like, it's how I feel about swag. So I just call it swag. But anyway, the moon's going to go into Scorpio, hit the south node. And there's just kind of like, these, I talk about this before, the Scorpio stuff, like the pain, the resentment, your past, it's so easy to hold on to. And it's so easy to get something out of it, right? Like, what do you get out of holding on to your victim story? You get this validation. You get this sense of like, I'm right. But what you don't get is like an ability to move forward. Like if you are wanting to achieve something in your life, but you're holding on to this pain, this resentment that, someone gave you or that you went through, the longer you hold on to that, because this is all on you, by the way. Like the longer you hold on to that, the more it's going to be difficult to get to where you need to go. And there's this sort of like feeling, I think, with the sun in Capricorn and the moon in Scorpio on the south node, are just kind of like letting it go, but not necessarily like a intervention letting it go, but just kind of like, is this really feel good? Like, does it really feel good to hold on to that pain, to hold on to that resentment? And like, are those stories and those narratives you're telling yourself actually helping you or are they harming you? And this is one of those ways of, I think those are just going to be one of those times of like, all right, it's time to clear this up. Like, all right, I need to kind of get over this. We're going into this waning moon. Our emotions are not as charged like when the moon is waxing, it's like moon in Scorpio, man, it's going to feel like the end of the world. It's going to feel like this. And you got to just like let it go because it's going to suck. This is a waning moon. It's just kind of like, yeah, I feel a little bit emotional, but also I fucking hate this place. Why am I here? Like, what do I need to get rid of? What do I need to purge out? And that brings us to next week. Next week, we have Mercury finally stationing direct. We have the sun going into Aquarius. We have the new moon in Aquarius and Venus conjoining Saturn. I would call it heavy stuff, but I'm kind of excited about next week. We really move forward into, in my opinion, like once we get to this new moon, we kind of have like the rest of January and February is weird. But then it's like March. I'm telling you guys, so much happens in March. And so this is kind of like that last clear up before we start moving forward into, because I mean, then we'll go into Aquarius season. We'll have the full moon in Leo. But then after that, it's the new moon in Pisces. And by that point, like Mercury's going to be in Pisces. Saturn's going to be in Pisces. Then Pluto goes into Aquarius. Then Venus goes into, conjoins Jupiter. And then Mars goes into Cancer and leaves shadow. But next week, Mercury finally stations direct. And I think, again, what I was trying to say earlier at the beginning of this episode was, like, there's these transits that really lighten up the Mars retrograde energy, and Mars stationing direct really lightens it up, and Venus trining Mars. But like once Mercury goes direct, then I think there's going to be much more of a mental click of like, oh, it's time to move forward. Oh, it's time to go into this area that like it's time to actually do this. So it's really exciting. So with that being said, I think that's what I got for you guys. Be sure if you want the best 2023 astrological calendar, you go to voyage.earth. There's, of course, going to be links in the description below. Use my name, Cam White, for 10% off. Yeah, and that's about it. With that being said, I'll be seeing you guys. Oh, well, let me also say this too. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm going to be here. Make sure you like this video, comment for the algorithm. I love and appreciate you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.